Hey, all you Gretas and Shutazcats out there. Welcome to Chapter 9, Environmental Science Notes, Section 2, How is Food Produced? So think about where your food comes from. Today, agriculture uses both high input or industrialized farms and low input, your traditional local farms, methods to produce the world's food supply. So we have three systems that supply most of the world's food. We have croplands, such as your main grains, rice, wheat, corn, rangelands and pastures and feedlots, which give us our meat, and then your fish and shellfish production. Now, by specializing, it makes us a lot vulnerable. About 14 species of plants and animals supply most of the world's calories. So if we lose any one of those through disease, climate change, habitat loss, it would be disastrous. The fact that Ireland depended so heavily on potatoes, when the fungus attacked, the blight attacked the potatoes, that caused the Irish potato famine because that was most of their diet. So 3 crops account for half of the calories consumed on the planet. You guys want to guess what they are? It is oat, rice, and corn are your 3. So, but a lot of that doesn't go to feed us, which I'll talk about. We have land-based agriculture. We have 2 ways. We have this industrialized agriculture. This is very high input. So this is what you see on those industrialized farms. Very heavy equipment, uses a lot of fossil fuels, commercial fertilizer and pesticides, all inorganic, and it makes a lot of money. These tend to be your monocultures. You're growing 1 to 2 crops. This is what you see in most of Indiana. You see corn or you see soy. Those are the 2 main things that are being grown here. Traditional or low input agriculture, this uses solar energy or the sun and human labor to grow a crop that will feed a family with little to no surplus. And this is more of your polyculture. So think about what you might have in your own backyard or a smaller organic garden versus the industrialized. We also have what is called organic agriculture, and these are going to be crops and livestock that are produced without the use of synthetic pesticides, inorganic fertilizers, genetic engineering, antibiotics, and growth hormones. So there's a lot less chemicals and a lot more care, and science has actually proven that organic food is actually more nutritious for you. The more love and effort you put into making the food, the better it is for you. Even down to animals. If they live a happier life that they're cared about, they actually are healthier for you than the animals that are crammed into cages. Green revolution sounds like a good thing, but it wasn't. It resulted in higher yields from existing cropland through industrialized agriculture. So it started the whole planting monocultures of a lot of things with tons of water and chemicals. It cost a lot, and it does feed our growing population, but there is a limit to it. It did affect a lot of habitat loss as well as climate change, impacting that in a negative way. So green sounds warm and fuzzy, but it is not. There's a lot of hidden costs of industrialized food production. Not all crops raised are going to end up on people's plates. Most of the grain grown actually is produced for livestock with a small amount for biofuels. So a lot of your food is eating your other food. A lot of hidden costs. Food costs are much higher than what people pay due to cost of pollution, environmental degradation, higher health-related costs, and various subsidies. We've talked about subsidies for other things. There are a ton of subsidies in industrialized agriculture, especially for things like corn, because corn goes to feed the chickens and the cows. So it makes that cheaper, but it's really not. We have various new varieties of food. So you can have crossbreeding, traditional methods of cultivating new varieties of food. Various artificial selection is used to improve crop or livestock varieties. So you take the tomatoes that are the biggest and you take a plant with the tomatoes that have a lot of tomatoes on the plant, and you breed them together, and then you get a lot of big tomatoes that are a lot of the plant. So artificial selection turns what foods used to be like into the foods we have today. There's a neat link for that. Feel free to check that out. Then we have genetically modified organisms, or GMOs. You can have gene splicing, where you'll add, delete, or change the DNA. So you'll take something from a totally different species and move it in to something else. Fish can handle cold weather very well. Tomatoes cannot. So they've literally taken the gene for handling cold weather, and they pulled it out of the fish, and now it's in tomatoes. And it's probably in the tomatoes that you've eaten. So just an example. A lot of crops have been genetically modified to be able to handle the Roundup pesticide or herbicide. And so it kills all the other weeds, but it doesn't kill the plants. But now it's covered with a chemical that is illegal in most other nations on this planet. So I tend to stay away from GMOs, not because they're GMOs, but because I know they're covered in chemicals, at least here in the United States. There is some controversy about it, like I just talked about. They're still trying to figure out the benefits. GMOs can be really, really good. They're working on genetically modifying a lot of rice to be much higher in vitamin A and getting that to developing countries where a lot of kids go blind because they're not getting vitamin A in their diet. So something like that is a really, really good thing. So genetically modified food is not bad. It just depends on what it's being genetically modified to do and what it's coated in. Now, meat consumption has grown steadily. They're expecting global meat consumption to double by 2050. This cannot happen. About half the world's meat is from livestock raised on unfenced rangeland or pastures, and then half the world's meat is raised using industrialized factory farming. Most of the United States comes from the industrialized factory farming. And this is large numbers of animals that are bred in feedlots or cages or pens to gain weight. That is misspelled very quickly, and concentrated animal feeding operations, or CAFOs. CAFOs threaten the environment and human health, and we will look more at that this week and next. Fish and shellfish production has risen as well. So a fishery is a concentration, we talked about this, of aquatic species suitable for commercial harvesting in ocean or inland bodies of water. We talked about last chapter how we're overfishing these areas. So we can have what's called aquaculture, which is fish farming. Raising fish and shellfish for human consumption. This is the world's fastest growing type of food production. Pretty much get a big giant swimming pool, throw a whole bunch of fish in it, done. Most species are raised, that are being raised, feed on algae or other plants like carp or catfish, but they do have some meat-eating species that are also being farmed. So just something to think about. And we are done with those notes. So before I go, I want to let each and every one of you know you are good enough, you are smart enough, people do like you. And in case I don't see you, good afternoon, good evening, and good God, do your homework.